Hello, how are you, Chevre? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Chav Beis Kislev, Friday, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Vayeishev. This week, Tuesday and Wednesday, were Yutes Chav Kislev, the Yom Tov, the day of liberation of the Alter Rebbe from his arrest and liberation. We celebrated his liberation. In Mirza Hashem, this coming Sunday night is the first night of Chanukah. So we have to understand the connections between the liberation of the Alter Rebbe, Parshas Vayeishev, and Chanukah. But before we start, as usual, we'll start with a posik, a prayer to Hashem, and that is from Kapitel Pei Aleph, posik Vav. Eidos Vayeishev Somoi Bitseisoi Al Eretz Mitzrayim, which translated means he made it a testimony for Yosef when he went out over the land of Egypt. Oi, I stopped him a little posik. Svas lo yodaiti eshmo, a language that I did not know I would hear. So I want to repeat the posik to make it 100%. Should be able to accomplish what it's meant to accomplish. Eidos Vayeishev Somei B'tzeisei Al Eretz Mitzrayim Svas Le'adaiti Eshmo. So what this means, Rashi says, is that this was on the day of Rosh Hashanah. He was released from prison. Yotzu Yosef Mibeiso Asurim. Yosef was released from prison. Svas Le'adaiti Eshmo Mefeirish B'Mesechta Seita. This is a story which is told in the tractate of Seita in Gemara. Shelimdoi Gavriel Shivim Loshin. The angel Gavriel taught Yosef like that 70 languages. Because since he was going to be the future viceroy of Egypt, so there was a law that the viceroy had to know all the 70 languages of the world. And since at that point Yosef did not know those languages, as soon as he came out of prison, which was the next step to when he was going to become promoted from prisoner to prince, he had to know the 70 languages. So then, as the Pasuk says here, he was granted the 70 languages. What we see from this Pasuk, and this applies to every one of us in a certain way, is that when it comes to a point, when you're in danger, who are you going to call? Hashem. Stay connected. And then, if need be, the Eibishter will send an angel to teach you the 70 languages. He'll send you the help, whatever the help is. And sometimes it could be in an amazing, open, miraculous way, and you'll get helped. And that's what we see from this pasuk. And that's what we see concerning Yosef. What he had to do, where he had to venture, go, where no Yid had to go before, was like no Yid before. For example, he had to immediately know these 70 languages, because he was going to be the future viceroy of Egypt. So, now let's get back to Parshas Vayeishev. First, I want to say that the following vort I took, the kernel is from a Rebbe, Sikh of the Rebbe, in Chelik Chof Hei. Where over there the Rebbe starts with the pasuk that after Yosef, who was favored by his father, and he told his brothers his dreams, he had two dreams. In both dreams, it was that they would all be subservient to him, and he was the superstar. And it says that Yaakov heard the dreams, and the pasuk says, "Ve'ikana be'echav," his brothers were jealous. "Ve'oviv shomar es hadover," and his father guarded this point, this fact. So there's a big question what the Medrash means, what the Rebbe quotes the Medrash, and the Rebbe says that it says that Yaakov took a pen and he wrote down. According to the Rebbe, he didn't write down the dream. Other people say he wrote down the dream, but in any case, he made a note of it. He wrote down the precise time and place, and he was awaiting its fulfillment. That means v'shomer es hadover, he was waiting its fulfillment, but it also means v'shomer es hadover, he made a note of it. Be'eze yom, what day this happened, be'eze shah, u'be'eze mokem. So he made a note of the time, place, etc., of when he heard the dream, let's say, not what the dream was. So the Rebbe asks many questions. Look at the Sikha there, but the Rebbe explains basically that the point of what Yaakov did was the point. In other words, the essence. because everything that happens later to the Jewish nation has to start with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankov. Maisa of a similar bonim. So what they do has an eternal effect and impact on the entire future. And now to understand, what did Yaakov do over here? So before we get to that, let's first talk about what starts now. What's the chiddush of Parshas Vayeishev over everything that happened till now? And one obvious answer is that from now starts a new archetype, a new paradigm. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are the Avos, but they never actually went into real exile. They never actually went into a real secular environment. They never actually went into a real, like they say, cosmopolitan Jew. But here with Yosef starts the real concept of Golus. Even Yaakov's leaving and running away, being a fugitive, running away from Esav, and spending time by his gangster uncle is, number one, he's still by relatives. Number two, he meets the two loves of his life, Rachel and Leah, primarily, and he marries them. But he's never in prison. And he's never in a foreign land, completely surrounded by Gentiles, people that have really no connection to him. So with Yosef starts a new paradigm and really a new greatness, a new type of level of superhero, so to speak, that we never had before. So we'll have to understand in what constitutes the greatness of Yosef, and how do we see the preparation to it, that he was able to have the strength and the power to overcome all adversity and triumph. So, first of all, let's go back to understand the greatness of Yosef. I'll bring you an example that the Alter Rebbe, at the end of chapter 8 of Tanya, he says that a person shouldn't learn secular studies because the mind becomes contaminated. And then he says, except, obviously, to make a living, or like Rambam, Ramban, V'Siyaiton, people in the stature like Maimonides, that they knew how to use it to serve Hashem. So the Rebbe, in his commentaries on Tanya, explains that what the Alter Rebbe means over here, in the second level. And that's why he brings an example of the Rambam, Maimonides, and the Ramban, is because only if you're on such a level could you do that. Do you know how to do that? Then you're really from the elite tzaddikim. Because in tzaddikim itself there are two levels. What does it mean over here in chapter 8? The way the Rebbe learns Pshat, it means we're dealing with such a super powerful level of holiness and spirituality that whatever comes into the orbit automatically will sooner or later become transformed to holiness. So we don't have to see it at the outset before what the connection is to holiness. It just means that automatically it will become elevated. Just to give another example, similar but not the same example, the Rebbe once spoke about Hilchas Avodah Zarah, the laws of idolatry. So a regular Jew is not permitted to study these laws. You're not allowed to study other religions. That's called Sholosh Klippos Atmeis. It's non-permissible. Those are deis, those are concepts that are not allowed to be studied because they can harm you in a very real way. But obviously, the Bezdin, Sanhedrin, they have to be bucky in those laws. So that means that in a certain sense, the regular person in Sanhedrin, the tzaddikim, they were so proficient and expert in every single Avodah Zarah on the planet, more than regular people of other nations that were serving these idols. The Chachamim, the tzaddikim, they knew the laws of every single one of these idols inside out. Why? Because they had to know if someone was told that there was a witness that this and this person served the idol, they would ask these questions. Did he do this with his right hand? Or was it with his left hand? You made a mistake. To serve that idol, you have to do it with the left hand. Whatever the story is, so they had to be proficient and expert in every single form of idolatry. But for a regular Jew, who's not that level tzaddik, is he allowed even to learn anything about these other religions? Of course not. But for the level of those tzaddikim, not only it's not a problem, they must. Now the same thing is true about certain tzaddikim. The type that could go into the abyss of debauchery and decadence and still remain unscathed And not only that, illuminate everything that comes into their orbit. But these are only special tzaddikim. Even amongst tzaddikim, these are like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai would say, they're bnei aliyah, and if there's only two, it's me and you, and he's referred to his son, and if it's only one, it's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And that's why it actually says that the difference, what distinguished Yosef from all of his brothers, and even Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, was, as Chassidus says, they were all royei tzoyin. They were shepherds. They had to remain, in a certain degree, disengaged from Paris, from London, from Las Vegas. Why? Because their level of spirituality would have not been sustained and kept strong if they would have been in such an environment. It's hard to say that, but that is the fact. That is the way it's explained in Chassidus. Their level of holiness, especially the Avos, were more as it stayed in the realm of Atzilut, in the highest world of Atzilut. Who brought down, who evolved, so to speak, who had a power to go even lower and stay on such a level of holiness? Yosef HaTzadik. He was a new paradigm. And for the future, we're going to have strength and inspiration and powers from this Yosef HaTzadik, that he was able to do it for all the future generations. And that's why, I think we mentioned this before, why when we bless the children, we say, you should be like Ephraim v'Menashe, the grandchild. Why did Yaakov bless like Ephraim v'Menashe? Because they were children that were born in Egypt. And still, they were the way you're meant to be. Why? Because they were the children of Yosef. And they were the grandchildren of Yaakov. And the grandchild is the ultimate test, being in a totally alien environment and still staying true to the traditions of where he comes from, and the values and the principles, etc. So now we understand what makes Yosef different. So in our history, for example, we have Yosef HaTzadik, who's a new paradigm. We had Mordechai HaTzadik, similar idea. He's got to know languages. He understood Bixen and Seresh. He's hanging around that Achashverosh, who is not a refined person whatsoever. You could say actually the opposite. The sort of glutton, kills his wife, and he takes money to sign a death decree to the Jews. We're not dealing with a very refined character. And Mordechai is hanging around over there. It's a very low place. Politics make strange bedfellows, as they say in English. So Mordechai is becoming a political person. Obviously, it's because he's on a higher level and he has a special mission. And that's part of the mission. Only a tzaddik like Mordechai HaTzadik, could go become a member of such a parliament and hang around such a place of intrigue and danger and things that are very, very negative, the lowest of the low, decadence. And the same thing is the Rambam, being in the palace of the Sultan and seeing what's going on over there, etc., etc. All those sort of tzaddikim were one of a kind, a whole different level. Rambam, Mordechai, Yosef HaTzadik. And by the way, when it says Rambam v'Ramban, I think what he means also is the Rambam, he wrote the Sefer Meir Nevuchim. So he actually had to delve deeply into the philosophy of the Greeks. But besides for that, the word tzaddikim like the Ramban, who they had major debates with the king and the queens and in front of all the royal statesmen and the popes and whatever they were from the country. So they had to be learned in all the sciences and the knowledges of the world to be able to face the greatest sages and to be able to have a debate, open forum. Everyone could ask him anything. So such a person, such a tzaddik, who's going to go into the belly of the beast, so to speak, and confront every sort of thing that will be exposed, and to illuminate that, only special, the highest level of tzaddikim could do that. In other words, similar to what's explained in other places in Chassidus, I don't want to elaborate, but we have neshamas the ma, and we have neshamas the ban. Neshamas the ma is not really that they struggle with negativity. It's not really that they struggle with opposition. They're just like a lighthouse, a super, I don't know what you call it, a super star lighthouse that just lights up in an unparalleled way everything. So really it's like the level of essence that's able to uncover the spark, the goodness that's in everything. And that's why they're called Bnei Aliyah. As the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 10 of Tanya, we could call them Bnei Aliyah. Aliyah means to elevate, the masters in the superior art of elevation, of extraction. Any goodness, any redemptive angle, which could be anywhere, they will be able to discover, ignite, etc. So that's Yosef HaTzadik. Now, let's go back to the beginning for a second. I don't think we're going to have time to talk about all the different things, but anyways, right away from when Yosef is born, if you remember in Parshas Vayetze, it says, Vayikash Yolda Rachel es Yosef, Vayeme Yaakov Eloven Shalcheni ve'elchel mekoimi ula'artzi. From the day he's born, Yaakov understands already his mission by Lavan is over, and now he's got Gawa, we've got the power. He's got now the power, the secret weapon, the antidote, that now he could confront and encounter Esav, and even elevate Esav, or take care of that problem. And Rashi brings it down on the spot. Rashi says, Misheneled, as soon as Yosef was born, Stonoi shel Esav. The nemesis of Esav was born. In other words, the one who was going to take out Esav, who had the power to do that. And who was that? Not Yaakov, Yosef. Yosef was the reinforcements to Yaakov that's going to be able to take out Esav. That's what Rashi says right over here. And he brings the word that says, Beis Yosef is Lahava, Yaakov is Eish, Yaakov is compared to a fire, Yosef is compared to a flame, Esav is compared to the house of straw, and a fire without a flame does not affect over a long distance. Mishenelid Yosef, Botach Yaakov, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once Yosef was born, Yaakov knew, game over. He has the power now to finally take care of the Esav problem. And by the way, Rashi also brings it immediately over here in the beginning of our parsha. The reason I mentioned that Rashi in Vayetze, because already a couple of parshas ago, what I want to bring out is from day one, we see this narrative concerning Yosef, that he's the next level. And Rashi brings it down over here also in the beginning of Vayeishev. Now, it also says that Yaakov loved Yosef more than the other brothers because he was a ben zukunim loy. And he gave him a ksoinis pasim. He made him a fine woolen tunic. Rashi over here says, what does it mean, ben zkunim? One of the meanings is, barchakam ulei, he was a wise son. Kol mashalomad, mishem ve'ever masalei. Everything he was taught, he gave over to Yosef. And then it says he gave him a pasim. One of the interpretations that Rashi says is, umedesh agoda al shem tzaresav. The Rosh Tevis of the word pasim represents all of his future escapades and problems, Yosef's, which is shenimkel peitifar, so the pei stands for peitifar, l'sochrim, to the merchants, that's the samach, uli Ishmaelim is the yud, the Ishmaelites, uli midyanim, that's the mem of the word pasim, the Midianites. But the pneumius, the inner meaning of this is, he gave him a coat, protection. Being that he was the son of Yaakov, he gave him the protection that gave him the strength, the spiritual holiness to withstand all of those things. That's what it means that he gave him a coat. Now, we said that he shomer es hadavar. Before we get to that, I want to just read to you a couple of balaturims, which to me it's mind-boggling, and that's why I really want to mention it, because over here we see the Neflois Matera Secha, and also one obvious connection to Yutas Kislev and Parshas Vayeishev. Look at what the Balaturim says in the words Ben Zukunim Hulei. One of the Balaturim is Seifei Teves Omun. The word that he says over here, Ben Zukunim Hulei, the last letter of all these words, equals to Omoin, which means a nursling. Shemosalei Sisrei Torah, he gave him the secrets of the Torah. Shenemar bo ve'eye etzlei Omoin ve'eye sheshuyim. The pasuk means I, which is like the Torah, was unto Hashem like a nursling. I was a delight. Which this refers to Sisrei Torah. There's so much pnimius Torah in these words of the Balaturim, I cannot tell you, because What does a nursling mean? A nursling is the deeper level. It's near the mother. It's near the ultimate source. So there's one level of Torah which talks about law and physical life. That's not called Amen, and it's not called Shashrim. It's not the inner workings of Hashem's mind, which is total, absolute essence divinity. When we talk about laws and regulations, you might think it doesn't seem to be the essence of the Torah. But what happens if we're talking about God Himself? And that's what the Kabbalah, Pnimiyus HaTorah, talks about. So the Pnimiyus HaTorah, Sisrei Torah, as the Baal HaTurim himself says, Shemosalei Sisrei Torah, that's called the Amen and Shashuyim. Next Baal HaTurim, the word Zkunim, the Gematria Roz, the word Zkunim, the Gematria equals the numerical value is 207, which equals to the word Roz, secret. Shemosalei Rozi Torah, He gave him the secrets of the Torah. And not only that, the Gematria is there. It's the Gematria of the word that equals crown. Al Shem Atera Zekenim B'nei Bonim. The real crown of the grandparents is the grandchildren. So this is phenomenal. We see from this so many things. That only Chassidus, Sisrei Torah, Pnimiyus HaTorah is the thing which will give you the koiches to face whatever is coming your way. Las Vegas, Melbourne, London, Paris, whatever it is. And to be able to even go there into the modern world. They were going into Egypt. This gave them the strength. Yaakov was the source of the Sisrei Torah that he was able to give to Yosef, even though Yosef was going to have to go further and face the challenge on his own. But still, it came from Yaakov. And it's interesting to look at those Baal HaTurim. So there we see straight away a connection between Yutes Kislev, Pnimiyus HaTorah, the Alter Rebbe, one of the greatest spreaders and teachers of Sisrei Torah, Pnimiyus HaTorah, Yutes Kislev and Parshas Vayeishev. So now, let's get back to V'oviv Shomer Es HaDover. What the Rebbe explains is basically that whenever we have a disciple, and this disciple has to go further, and he could be even greater, but the disciple has to always have a point where he sticks to the source. Because V'oviv Shomer Es HaDover means the source always is guarding and makes sure that it shouldn't deviate. By being connected to the source, that's how whatever comes later, we're guaranteed and assured will not go wrong. So even the greatest of the greats, the giants, the super giants, have to also stand in a giant. And this is what we've always seen, always, without fail. Every great leader who surpassed his master, nevertheless, was absolutely, totally devoted and loyal to his master. And you could even say humbled before his master, even if he was greater. And it was only through that connection, connected to his master, that he had the power to forge further and go where his master couldn't even go. So he takes whatever his master gave him, like a ber sucha enim abitipa, the cistern that doesn't lose a drop, but then it evolves into a mayan amizgaber. It goes further and further and further. And that's the way it always was, and that's the way it is. So the Rebbe in the Sikha in Chiluk Hafei, this is a chidush. He says, even though it's written before about the connection between the Magid, the teacher of the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe, that there was this connection, there was this vort of V'oviv Shomer Es HaDover, referring to the Magid and the Alter Rebbe, but there's nowhere where it says an explanation of what it means really. And the Rebbe interprets it to mean that on the day that Rebbe Zircher Magid passed away, his yortzeit, his Yemi Lul, his Yutes Kislev, the Magid held the Alter Rebbe's hands and he told him, Yutes Kislev is Unzeri Lula. Yutes Kislev is our day of celebration. Which the day of passing is called the Elula, but it also means the celebration of Yom Tov. So the Mezritcher Magid, 26 years before Yutes Kislev, he told him Yutes Kislev is Unzeri Elula. The Rebbe says this was the Va'oviv Shomer Es HaDover. This is the point of the connection of the essence, a physical act, where this whole idea of the disciple who moves on and goes where his masters didn't go, but is still connected. And there's a physical act which brings out this point, like Yaakov, taking a pen and writing it on paper, here too, by the Maggid grabbing the Alter Rebbe's hands. He gives him the power to forge ahead and further and accomplish something that was never accomplished before. Which, by the way, just take a moment to speak about what was the Alter Rebbe's accomplishment. That really, he brought down Chassidus and he made it individualistic. And I don't have time now, we're running out of time. When you learn the Hakdamas HaMalaka, the introduction of Tanya, every time I read it, I marvel at it. How the Alter Rebbe was so ahead of his time. And the whole issue that he's writing the Sefer about is, how does a person make religion, service of Hashem, call it whatever you want, spirituality, personal, individualistic. And the Mizrachim Maggid's Torah and the Alter Rebbe's Torah, in the Mizrachim Maggid's Torah and the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, there isn't any such talk. And the Alter Rebbe writes in his introduction what he's going to accomplish. Now he's going to address, acknowledge, affirm individuality. That's the most dangerous thing. Your existence as an individual. How does it fit with subservience? That whole idea. And that's Chassidus Chabad. Chassidus Chabad was that a person, as an individual, with whatever that means, should also relate to Hashem and feel and find his own personal individualistic space. We'll have to leave that for another time. So I want to finish with a story, which I probably said the story before, but it's one of the most amazing stories. And that is that on Yud Beis Kislev, 1932, 4 years after the Rebbe married the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughter, there's a famous story that one morning, Yud Beis Kislev, the Frierdiker Rebbe called over the Rebbe, and he said, for the dream I had last night, it's worthy to give mashka, and he says, give me a kiss. Frierdiker Rebbe told the Rebbe to give him a kiss, and then it seems like the Rebbe kissed the Rebbe kissed the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe kissed the Rebbe on his cheek, and then he explained what happened was that he had a dream that his father came to him, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and told him, why are you down? By dir is lichtig in Sturm. Your home, your house is lit up, it's illuminating. So I woke up, this is the Frierdiker Rebbe telling his son-in-law, and I looked and I saw the moonlight coming through the window, but then I figured, no, that's not what it is. And then I got up and I went out of bed and I walked down the hall, and there I saw you learning Torah in the study, in the library. So this is Va'oviv Shomer Sadavar. With this story, we see a physical story that happened on this planet Earth, where the Frierdiker Rebbe got a message, a vision from his father, telling him that his home is illuminated. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe informs his son-in-law that the son-in-law is the future. He is the light which is going to illuminate the world after the Holocaust. And then he continued in the same event, at the same episode, in the same day. He continued, he started telling him how one is meant to put on 4 pairs of tefillin. And the Rebbe, the son-in-law, asked his father-in-law, so you think for me it's an Inyan, I should put on tefillin? And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, Fadir is als an Inyan. For you, everything's an Inyan. The sky is not the limit. So this is amazing words again. The father-in-law is telling his son-in-law that there's no limits to what you are meant to accomplish, and what you are going to accomplish, and what you have to accomplish. The one who revived Judaism from the ashes of the Holocaust and really, really was going to bring Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs to the modern world was the Rebbe. And this is the lesson we have to take. The lesson we have to take is a very powerful lesson. Each and every single one of us, to a certain degree, has to build and stay powerfully connected to our source in the most powerful way. But at the same time, we have to realize we each have an individualistic mission. We have to add something. We have to accomplish something. That's why we're here. And we have to realize that the only way we can accomplish this is by being connected to the source. And it's not a contradiction. None of us are actually the Vayeishev compared to the Yaakov. But there is a dimension of this going on. We all have to remember that we have to accomplish something. No! We have to bring Hashem into ourselves, into our awareness, into our surroundings, like no one else. The spot where you're at is the spot where you're meant to illuminate. But that's only going to come when you're connected to your source. The Eibusher should help. And this is what Chanukah is about. We light the candle. Al Pesach Beisai Mi Bachutz. That's what the light of Chanukah is. It goes out to the furthest near regions, like no other mitzvah. The Eibusher should help. We should be lighthouses that illuminate our darkness, and through our work in that regard of being lamplighters and bringing illumination, we will bring about the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, take it from Yad Mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborich, your man in Melbourne. Good Yontif.